Dust collectors that we're using here to capture all the ambient air dust. And the way they work is each hole on the other side, the side you're looking at right now, is the pulse valves that clean the filters with a reverse pulse of air from the compressor. There's 2 filters in each one of the holes up there. So they got like 92 and 92 on the 2 sides as far as the number of filters. So each one of those valves cleans 2 filters. And how it works is the dust accumulates on the outside of the filter. I know it's hard for you to see this illustration, but the air comes in the top, the dirty air inlet, accumulates on the filters, and as it accumulates, we'll read a pressure drop across the filters on this gauge. And what we're reading is between the dirty air side and the clean air side. So when it gets up to approximately 2 inches, you'll see the 2 inches displayed, and when it gets to 2.5 inches, then the thing will start pulse cleaning. You want some dust on the filter for your maximum efficiency. So what it'll do is start pulsing like the first one and the 6th one, and it'll work its way across. You don't fire 2 next to each other. It'll fire all the top filters, then it'll start on the next row and work its way down and blow the dust off. And with the downward airflow, it pushes it down to the plenum down below and the screw conveyors. The screw conveyors take it across, drop it into the main transfer screw, take it up and drop it into whatever container. You know, it's not complicated at all. To get a reading on these, we'd have to have the fans on. But the way these things are set.
So there's a collection bin always tied to this discharge?
I hope so.
Okay.
You know,
They're going to put a chute, and then we're going to put a dumpster under it.
So they're going to catch whatever's ambient coming into here, and it'll take it up the chute. And we verified those. So this is.
What kind of pressure does it say now? We haven't put any dust in there yet, I would think.
It's going to stay like 3/4 if we have them to fire up the fans. If you have them up,
Can we fire one up?
yeah,
That'd be great.
Fire that in one up.
So does this automate between Baghouse 1 and Baghouse 2?
They're both independent, so that's why we have 2 gauges.
So there's just a redundant system, and we select which Baghouse?
Well, Baghouse 1 and Baghouse 2 are exactly the same. It just depends the way the Y comes in and the way air is distributed. Whoever gets the most dirt, this one, say, let's picks up more dirt than this one does. It gets up to its settings, which we'll get a reading here in a minute. You have the high point is 2. That's when it'll start pulsing, and then it'll stop pulsing on 1.5. He's got 1 fan on now.
So are both Baghouses always running?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The way the air distribution is, they're always on.
All right.
They'll always be on. And there's a selector switch here that can put it on hand, which means pulse all the time.
Okay.
Auto, which means you're doing the auto, and the off time. And the off time, what that does is when you turn all the fans off, it'll go through its pulse sequence for like 10 minutes. And that's controlled by this little timer right here. And it's got a bunch of different settings. So what you're doing is having no air go through the fan, but it will pulse clean.
That's in the off position.
Right now it's in the auto position.
So that's when you put it in the off position, it goes through that pulsing.
Pulsing in the off time.
Can we do a demonstration of a pulse? Will we see or hear anything?
Yeah, you'll hear it. Have we got the compressor on? I don't know if they turned the compressor back on. I asked them to put the air on. You'll get an indication on the panel too. So right now they're both running real even, 0.3, and it depends on how many fans he's got turned on. The more he has turned on, the higher the reading you'll get because you're a higher air to cloth ratio across the fans.
Okay.
So if I take the low, ran it all the way down, and ran the high down, now the cleaning light will come on. If we had compressed air, you'd hear the thing pulse cleaning right now, but they don't have the compressed air on yet. This alarm is set at 4 inches. It doesn't do anything. I don't think you have it wired to any triggering device, but it's just telling you if compressed air is off or something, you shouldn't have got up to 4 inches, or it's time to replace the filters. And I imagine this thing won't pulse for a long time, and when it does, you probably won't reach the 4. And both of them are set the same, the low, the high. You can't cross the two numbers. Yeah, if they're both dirty at the same time, then they'll both pulse at the same time.
Are you monitoring pressure, air pressure? Which one? If it's too low, it won't pulse.
No, it won't, or if it's turned off. That's when you'll see it climb up to 4 inches pretty quick.
Once they fill up.
Yeah, they just clog up, and you don't want them to let them get that full before you start pulsing them. As they season, you might move these up a ½ inch each, as it gets, 2 or 3 years down, because unless you get a lot of moisture or something in there, the filter should last for years on this type of application.
Which one's number 1 and which one's number 2?
The far ones, the way they got it depicted, I think the far one is number 2 and the near one is number 1. Tell by the drops on the chutes.
Okay.
And then the system can run remote. You can stop it. I don't know if they have turned the compressor on. I don't think they have yet.
I know you got questions. Ask this guy. Ask. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. He had some questions about the filters.
How do we know when the lifetime of the filter is used up?
Well, when you get up to 4 inches pressure drop, then you can pretty well figure your filters are
So
used
even though
up.
it's purging, they're still.
You replace all of them, not just.
You usually replace all of them rather than individual, because what will happen if you replace one, that's the cleanest filter, less
Short
resistance.
circuit right
All
to
the
it,
dirt's
okay.
going to go right to there.
Like changing one dead battery in it. Pardon me. What's the typical life of filters like that? I mean, I'm sure it's application.
It's
driven,
application specific, but I would say you get 2 or 3 years out of these.
But, all right.
Unless somebody turns on a sprinkler or you suck up a lot of water.
Yeah, moisture will kill it.
Moisture kills you, but they will dry out, and they are washable, that you can wash them down.
Can we take one system offline for a time and run this on only one of these, or is it designed for?
Not the way you got your ducting set up.
Right. Okay. There's no way to isolate. Okay.
You need to be able to segregate
Okay.
your air.
There, you wake you up.
That's a pulse?
That's a pulse.
Wow, is that one or did you just bump it?
No, that's just one. It'll go to the next one in a minute. That's probably firing 2,
On
like
each side
halfway,
or on one side?
on one side. You're just firing the far
This
one.
side, I take it. What runs this? What runs this?
It usually runs off of this system, but it may be turned off in the main control.
So anytime this is operating, these are turning.
They should be, because what happens, you don't want to accumulate a lot of dust in the bottom,
I don't know when.
because the air will just circulate it back up and put it back on the filters. You want to drop it out.
Okay.
I mean, if you ever got a feeling that, hey, we're not getting that much out of it, you can sequence.
We'll need to have someone
5
show us
minutes
that,
on,
though.
5 minutes off, so you're not running them all the time if you wanted to, but they don't have it set up that way.
Okay.
How do we know how to set the auger system?
As far as set what?
How does this thing work? Is it on a timer? Is it figure out when there's material to move? Or
No, it's strictly basic. When the collector's on or when your fans are on, this should be on.
So this thing just runs all the time.
It'll be running all the time.
So let's just pretend that we don't have much debris in here and we're only getting a teeny stream. Should we turn it on some cycle or should we always run it?
That's why I was just telling him you could put cycles on here to say, okay, run 5 minutes every 10 minutes or something like that, and have
Well,
adjustable.
Is there a risk to that? Can we end up backing the system up or something? Or
We could if you got a lot, but if you sit there and watch it and there's not much coming out of it, I just don't want to accumulate the stuff in the hopper.
right, all right.
That's all.
So we can use our judgment. If we're just getting a little trickle out of there when we're running,
Yeah.
we can turn the thing on a cycle. If it's still just a trickle, we can decrease
Change
the cycle.
You can have an on-time, off-time timer.
Okay.
Say, 10 minutes off. 5
Is there
minutes.
one in there for this?
No, there isn't.
We have
Nobody
to
has
install one.
You'd have to install it. Or wherever you got the control for this, because right now somebody's got it turned off somewhere.
Okay.
But anytime you it. If you get a lot of material, then you should do that.
All right. What is that contraption right there?
The what? That's a rotary valve. See, this thing doesn't care where it sucks, if it sucks from the top or the bottom. So you have to seal it airtight. So you seal it airtight here before you drop it, and then just take it up the screw. So that's why they have those.
So that thing just turns around and it keeps it sealed.
Yeah, it's got a bunch of vanes in there, like 6 vanes, and they go against the outside of the rotor like this. Picks up the material at the top and drops it out the bottom and seals against the edge.
Okay. So what's the pitfalls or maintenance? What kind of stuff do we have to look out for? I mean, I get the moving part stuff, but is there anything in this system?
Not really. There's nothing in the system. We got one valve up there that's stuck, and if a valve sticks open, what happens is that little solenoid valve, there's a solenoid valve up there, and it opens and lets the pressure off the back of the valve, which is like turning on the valve. And if that thing is sealed tight, it will turn the valve on, and you'll just dump a bunch of air.
Right.
So if you hear a bunch of air rushing, you have to
Shut
figure
the
out
supply off and figure it out.
figure out which one. That's why they put individual shutoffs, so you can figure out which one is the nice one.
All right.
Is there ever an issue as far as getting the ducting built up too much dust throughout the plant?
Yeah, there's an issue probably, but you know,
Excuse me.
they should have a sufficient airflow to keep it moving. But probably, we were talking earlier, there ought to be an inspection door once in a while. They can be washed, but you got to let them dry like 72 hours if you do wash them.
Right. You don't have a sample of one of the filters?
No, I didn't bring one, but it looks like a pleated filter, and they're about this long. We can take one out. I can show you.
Kind of oblong shape. If you look at the lid on the other side, it shows you the shape. Want to pull one out? I've seen them before they put the system in.
The only thing on these is you always put the seal in first.
Okay, all right.
I want
It's
to,
got it.
and it's got a seal on there. Now there's 2 of them in there.
Right.
Some people only replace one, and that's a mistake. So you replace both of them when you replace them.
How many filters are in each bank?
Well, you got 16 here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 times 16 is 96, or 92, if I can multiply. 96, 96.
I believe it's 96.
96, yep. And that's it, and it'll accumulate on the top.
So as these things pulse, it'll starts at the top and it'll pulse,
Yeah, it'll work its way across.
which makes the dust fall onto the ones below it, and then it'll start that next row down and pulse, then pulse, and pulse.
And you've got a big gap here in between them. That's why we went to the oval instead of the round.
Okay.
So you have a bigger for
Create more
material drop down in between them.
I'm curious of how it segregates the air and doesn't stir the dirt up once it drops.
Well, it does, because you got the air pushing down from the top.
Right, so it's collecting on the filters.
It collects on the filters, and you do build up a little bit more on the top than you do
Right.
on the others. But you get 95% of the filter when it pulses. It blows. Okay. Sometimes it goes to the next filter, and that's why you work your way down. But the majority drops in between the filters.
So why isn't air always flowing out through your screws, your augers?
Well, because we have a rotary valve on the end, so we're not sucking out of that. That's why we put a rotary valve. Because this thing doesn't care if it sucks from the top or sucks from the bottom. So that's why you always have a 55-gallon drum that's sealed tight, or a screw conveyor that seals tight at the end.
So the
And
screw's sealed, okay.
so it's sealed, and that's why it's got a multi-vane rotor in there. So
And
everyone,
where's that seal point at on the screw?
it's
right here?
between the body, because it's got multiple blades. I think this one's 6 or 8, and they seal against the body. So what you're doing is filling up a pocket every time it drops.
Right.
So you fill up a pocket, rotate it to the bottom, fill up a pocket, rotate it to the bottom,
Gotcha.
and it drops out.
Into the atmosphere right here.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's why I just seal them here rather than at the end of the screw in case something happens.
That makes sense.
So they work
So
independently.
that's why if they weren't running very often, you would stir dirt back up if it's laying around in here
Inside.
on your screw, yeah.
Right. That's why, I say you have to look at how much we're coming out of here with and say, hey, we don't have to run these all the time. There's no use running. You can put a cycle time on them for 10 off, 10 on. But you just hook these up over the top, just lift them slightly, and then just push them back down, and
Very good.
they snap into position.